Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, everyone, joining in this Sunday morning meditation, followed by a talk. It's great that everyone can be disciplined in their own time management and space management, and most importantly, your attention management in doing this meditation. So take your time to settle well in a good sitting meditation posture, preferably on the floor. In any case, you have to find a space and time and a situation that is very appropriate to do the meditation. So take a couple of moments to be inclusive of the motivation to do the meditation, not just for our temporary today, this body or me or this life kind of short-term benefit, but we can think about the benefit to others when we are calm and when we are good in our mind management. We are much more tender and kind to others, not only in good times, but even in difficult times, we can remain calm and be real benefit to others. And you can see subsequently how mind is very much happier that its ability to retain such good character. And then in all future events, your mind is completely recharacterized to become good and kind. So with this kind of a insightful and altruistic motivation, I invite you all to join me in doing this meditation. We'll start with the regular prayers that we will screen share. So join your hands at the heart in paying respect to the Buddha, the Enlightened One, his sacred, timeless wisdom teaching, which we rejoice and learn from, and his uninterrupted flow of lineages in all different traditions that has kept these teachings very strong, like the great person like His Holiness Dalai Lama and Sangaraja in Thailand and various leaders of the Dharma in different communities. All of them are working tirelessly for the benefit of Dharma. And we rejoice all of them and offer our prayers for their longevity and fulfillment of the wishes. So with this in motivation, join your hands at the heart, sit still, and stay very present in your prayers and your posture and meditation. After the prayers, I will lead you in the 3 10-minute slots of meditation, during which you will know how best to make it meaningful. So let's be as inclusive of these prayers for benefit all sentient beings. So we'll do the screen share of the prayers. Oyenda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Aite Refute Laidama Vaivach Ajivendala Aishare Vadavatu Endabu Dharma Sangha Aitere Vite Laidama Vaivach Ajivendala Aishare Vadavatu Endabu Dharma Sangha Aitere Vite Laidama Vaivach Ajivendala Aishare Vadavatu. May all beings have happiness and a cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they never part from happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they know a power from happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion of those near and far. May all beings have happiness and a cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. Now, in doing the meditation, please kindly observe the 4S. The first is stillness. That is the stillness of your posture from your feet all the way to your gaze of the eyes, your chin, your neck, your shoulders balanced, back straight, hands on the lap, the two thumbs touching just below the navel, the back of the hands resting on the lap. Your mind is fully with the posture, helping it to pose the posture. Know the significance, check and improve the posture, and feel the heartfelt motivation to stay with the posture, not letting it go, mind go astray or distracted or become dull or bored, but remaining very still, not only in the physical posture, but with your attention. Then with the second S is sincere motivation, with good intention to do this meditation so that we are best in our everyday lives, mind and thoughts and deeds and words that we use in order to be of benefit and help, not otherwise. So in order to do that, we will hatch these qualities by remaining still in mindfulness. To do this, we remain very serene with our attention. Firstly, when we are sitting in the first 10 minutes just in the posture, we keep our attention very serene to the very posture, calm, still, and always checking your posture and erecting the back, straightening the shoulders. If we are too stiff, relax a bit. If you're too slack, put a little bit of effort so that you're really serene in the very attention to keep the posture minded by the mind in meditation. And do all the above simply, with great sense of simplicity. Don't complicate it. Simply stay one with your posture, and the mind does the helping. And that is mindfulness of sitting in the correct posture. Do not let the mind wander off. If it does, gently bring it back and keep yourself in a meticulous fashion how to stay still in this correct meditation posture. Even if slight pain or discomfort arises, just bear with it and increase your calmness to get through it. while maintaining your good posture that you've been sitting in as a main object of meditation. Now we will focus our attention while observing the 4S to the mindfulness of doing forward counting of qualified rounds of breath. You qualify that by doing the inhalation, knowingly inhale positive thoughts in the form of oxygen that you see and feel. Stay with inhalation, then do the permeation of the oxygen in the lung. Do and know and see and feel the effect of this inundation and flooding of nervous system. Your body is energized, your mind is clarified, and then as you exhale, stay with the outgoing breath, release that carbon. With that, knowingly let go your sufferings, pain, worries, anxieties in one good out breath. And count that as 1. And likewise to the next, count that as 2, and 3, and 4. As each round of breath you do, you try to increase your clarity, your stillness, your serenity, and your sincere, attentive application of the technique. Unless you lose the count, which is possible, continue counting the rounds of breath. Even if you lose the count, do not become disturbed. Simply use it as a time to take a short 10-second mini break. And then repeat again, mindfully watching the rounds of qualified breath that you again resume to count forward as high a number you can get. Do this without any compromise, with a serene attention, with sincere motivation, with very good still and disciplined posture and attention. maintaining your good posture, particularly keeping it straight and not lose the composure. Now focus on this super qualified round breathing, which is trying to increase your resolution of concentration in witnessing the super qualified doing of the inhalation, knowing what to think, seeing the oxygen, feeling the benefit. Likewise, as you permeate the breath, you qualify the doing of the permeation which you should do. You should know what its effect has to your body, to the cellular level, and feel the inundation, the flooding of the whole nervous system by the red blood cells, and feel re-energized. In this way, you super qualify the doing, knowing, seeing, feeling, and then you, as you breathe out, stay without breath, and then do the exhalation qualifyingly, and see, know, and experience the expiration of sadness and pain or hurt or wrong views and hurt and guilt. Just breathe out. So in this way, do one super qualify round and do the reverse counting. Whatever high number you reach in forward counting in the previous technique, you reverse the counting from, say, 40, and then 40, 30, 39, then 38. While doing the counting, make sure your body doesn't lose its posture. Your serenity must be in place. Your body is the easiest fault line, but that's because your mind is not with the posture. So with this in mind, we will do the super qualified round breathing, reverse counting. Now we'll do the short one-verse prayer before we do the teachings. According to the intelligent and predisposition of it, where the earth and the Dharma agrelo and common vehicles. Is that the sound is okay, everyone? Vision is okay? Means you are not dying yet. Today my topic is sentient beings who die in sudden death. so, so it has been very, very important because there are so many people who die suddenly, and we have no idea what are the causes. and often there's a lot of consequences with the sudden death. Not only there are causes that are not explained by why people die suddenly, we all expect to live normally, and we don't want to die suddenly. Even when we do die, we think it's such an untimely death. We hardly accept death as a timely, but some deaths are so sudden, and there are lots of people who die in sudden death. This morning I just heard that 146 people died in a stampede in South Korea, for instance. People celebrating a Halloween celebration or whatever. So there are many people who die suddenly. They don't have to be old, they don't have to be sick, they don't have to have any kind of the diagnosed diseases, but yet people die very suddenly. So the purpose of today's talk is we as sentient beings are all subject to death. Death is certain, whether sudden or otherwise. And that time when we will die, sudden or otherwise, is always getting closer and closer. So it may look sudden, but actually death is always moment. We are actually dying each day, each week elapses. We are getting weaker and slower and whatever. But actual cause of sudden death are many. In the traditional teaching, they talk about 7 untimely deaths. Untimely death means sudden death, Means usually when a person lives a full life and dies normally, it would not be regarded as a sudden death, either because they lived long and healthy and they lived old and then died naturally. They may call it natural causes of death. But actually, even when people do die as a very old person, usually quite a lot of them die suddenly. People die of sudden death from cardiac arrhythmia, People die of heart attack from coronary heart diseases, People have sudden death from pulmonary embolism and acute respiratory arrest and a hemorrhage and then SIDS. Even for infants, they have sudden infant death syndrome. Yeah. Children, young babies who are born only few weeks, die suddenly, And so each of these people, from young infant to very elderly, who may otherwise be still expected to live few more years, but yet suddenly he had cardiac arrest, or he has a brain hemorrhage, or has a heart attack. So there are lots of this sudden death. When you look at the medical causes of sudden death, and they list all of those which I mentioned briefly, and they actually look at what are the causes of the sudden death. The causes of death are largely behavior, so which in Buddhism we call karma. the person creates karma, some kind of action, behavior, like smoking or drinking. These things are sometimes cause of sudden cardiac arrest, and drinking, and overweight, and age, and of course some people due to family history, and high blood pressure, and various disease like diabetes, and people who abuse alcohol and drug. These people are more likely to experience any of the above medical cause of sudden death. But when we talk about people dying in stampede, or people killed in a bushfire, or a flood, or a street accident, or a suffocation, or a medical overdosage, or due to pandemic, or due to punishment. Some may be like punishment because of their wrongdoing. Some countries they have capital punishment. Some people die in flood, and others die in fire. Others die while doing on the job. Others they get mauled by a wild elephant, or killed by wild beasts. Some people suffocate. Some people deliberately jump through cliffs and commit suicide. Others get possessed by some. These are all people can become easily expose themselves and others into experiencing sudden death. The purpose of this talk about sudden death, sentient beings who die sudden death, has many consequences to the person who experienced sudden death as well as to the survivors. Those who do not die naturally actually die in extreme anger or violence, and those people who are killed in war, for instance. You go to those places where people have fought in war. That places they have a battleground is wrecked with demons and ghosts. And sentient beings who die in those tragic violence and sudden death usually become unable to accept the death and not understand they're dead, and then become demons, become ghosts. And these sentient beings, which we call hungry ghosts, there are some direct cause of people being a hungry ghost, such as being miserly and stingy and greedy and so on. But some of the violent hungry ghosts are all said to be result of those who experience sudden death. And people have many among us. You would have some people in our family and circles who have experienced sudden death. And you can see the parents and family who have lost someone in sudden death, they don't cope with it themselves as one who has suffered the loss. You can see the devastation. The sentient beings who suffer depression, quite a lot of them are because they lost someone so young, and such a young child died, and mother have never recovered from that horrific loss. So all this suffering, and from suffering of depression and anxiety, guilt, anger, even people committing suicide, is usually due to a sudden death of some people in their lives, or maybe even just being exposed to a horrific accident, and you had a terrible trauma since then and you never recovered. So sentient beings who die in sudden death, and sentient beings who witness sudden death, or sentient beings who have experienced loss of loved one in sudden death or tragic violence and accident, are those who suffered severe consequences. So this talk is about how to understand the karma of sudden death. Like Moggallanaputra, Buddha's own very prominent disciple, while he was an arhat, but he was killed by a crowd of mob of 500 people and he died under violence. Even as an arhat, you don't escape your karma of doing the wrong thing in the past lives or wherever. He had to experience the death because he has done similar things to other people. So people don't die suddenly in tragic violence or accident or stampedes or in a car accident or whatever without karmic causes. The condition in which they died might be stampede or flood, but what they did to warrant the cause of them suffering in such a horrific death is their own actions. So therefore, sentient beings have to be very careful how they live and what they do to other living beings. Even harming small, creepy, worms or insects or things like that, disregarding their safety and totally destroy them aggressively, violently, doing something like that, become usually cause of such tragic death. So therefore, sudden death does not happen because of accident. Accident is only the condition, immediate condition of the death. But the possessive condition of the death is what karma the person created. Like all those people in the street celebration in South Korea, there were thousands. But why did 146 people died and another maybe 200 got injured, but others who were standing next to the other who killed survived? So the outer condition of the stampede was there, but there were those particular people who died in the same sudden death has previously created a karma collectively together. And I'm not here to tell what that it is here. But if the Buddha usually explained what those 146 did in the past life together, that they should die in such horrific accident. And that's why in the Buddhist Sutra, if you go to research untimely death, there are a couple of stories Buddha tells, like Moggala and Putra and King Bimbisara, who was killed by his son Ajatasattu in prison. They are actually why the son causes such a torture to his father, although seem very unacceptable on our side. But the king himself in his past lives have created unfortunate karma that he has to suffer. He has to die in prison under the cruel hand of his own son. So therefore, law of cause and effect is what sentient beings do not really understand. So best way to avoid losing oneself in sudden death or losing someone we love is how can we live more mindfully and more kindly so that that kind of sudden death is omitted. Because our life is very precious, but only if it lives. But once the life does not live, it means there is nothing to it. If for the life to live is like a butter lamp, that it has a fuel and a strong wick and a good container and a safe place to burn. When the oil and the wick and the condition is right, then the lamp will burn as long as the fuel will last. But there are times that the whole butter lamp got spilled, even only 2 minutes after it was lit, and whole oil got spilled, and not only the butter lamp went out, that even the place where it fell the oil burnt out. So there's a lots of people who have lost a young or lost someone very strong and healthy in their prime youth and so on. When we lose someone who is in their ripe age, maybe in the 90s or 80s, even then we try to avoid them from dying, and we try all kinds of things, whether it's medication or treatment or help or prayer or therapy or whatever. We try to do all kinds of things in order for people to prolong the person's life. You wouldn't believe how many people live so long. against all odds. And they enjoy good health and long life because they have lived a harmless life in past incarnation. They have not caused direct injury or killing to any living being. As a result of that, they enjoy not only long life and healthy life, and when they die peacefully and naturally, with great sense of dignity and legacy to be remembered. But there are others who don't, who don't live long, who don't live healthy, and who die in a tragic violence and tragic situation. There's lots of murder suicide in many countries and cities. Almost once every few months you can see the murder suicide. It's all because of the person is completely unconscious of their thoughts and their feelings, their emotions, and they take very drastic, violent, and murderous or mass murderous activities. So therefore, the people who are killed by, say, mass shooting by one gunman, for instance, like 20 people get killed by one gunman shooting in a shopping center or whatever. So there are things like that. Yet those of 20 people who got killed by one gunman's violence would have each of them have created causes, violent acts of destroying other living beings, from small insects to human beings. Because while murdering is illegal, but killing is not. In this country, people give license to go and shoot duck or go fishing as enjoyment, as a recreation. People engage in all kinds of careless activities, causing the killing of helpless birds and animals living in peace. When human beings engage in such a destructive behavior in other life, they themselves are actually creating causes of such sudden violent deaths. So there is nobody dies in accident or suddenly without formerly created karma. This is what really is all about. Important thing is that we need to understand the spirit of those who die suddenly, particularly under violence. I'm not so much talking about those people who die suddenly due to medical complications. Maybe they already have a heart disease, heart problem, and lung conditions, and high blood pressure, and various other kind of very sort of dangerous health conditions. So those people are already kind of maybe in their ripe ages, and they could. It's just matter of any day. Quite a lot of people do die suddenly, but they do suddenly, but they don't die in violence or aggression. They die in medically sudden death. We're not talking about people being killed in gun violence or on a stampede or flood or fire or gunshot. We're talking about people who have a lot of medical condition who die suddenly because they were already a lot of medical conditions. And that's why even the condition that may have made themselves vulnerable to die is related to their behavior in the immediate last 20 years behavior, such as smoking, such as drinking. So cause of sudden death for cardiac arrest or pulmonary embolism or hemorrhage are all to do with one's own behavior. Like smoking, drinking, overweight, and high blood pressure, these are all related to what person ate or drank and how did he live his life. What he didn't take care of what he ate and what he did and what he didn't. People go and enjoy eating and drinking to the delight of the little piece of flesh called tongue, but to the misery of the rest of the 5 organs. So tongue is the winner and 5 organs the losers. I mean, nobody die of tongue problem. The tongue is still okay, but the rest of the organs completely devastated by one's enjoyment in the taste. Gustatory kind of I would say indulgence has cost people's lung and heart and liver and kidney, and all those major 5 organs are mainly destroyed by the gustatory I would say abuse. People enjoying the taste of what they drink and what they eat. But they are completely mindless of what it will do to their heart, to their blood, to the lung, to the kidney, to their high blood pressure, and the rest. So that's why Buddha was so ahead of his time, his moderation of eating and not drinking at all any alcohol, and not to mention drugs, was right from the very beginning. It's not a question of a not because people become Buddhists and become monks, but he just said that's just basically a right livelihood. Try to make your life healthy. Do not eat this. Not because you believe in future incarnation, or not because you want to attain nirvana, but just for your own life, to live long and healthy. You're going to jeopardize what you do with it. So, of course, the people who die in sudden death due to violence and natural disaster, these kind of causes are usually similar actions one has created. If one has thrown insects and bugs in fire, it's quite obvious that it's creating direct cause of oneself going to be killed in the fire one day. If one is flushing the insects and worms and creatures in the water, and without minding them to put them a safe place to go to, one is directly creating causes of dying in the flood. It's so obvious, because people don't die of flood for no reason. They die of flood because they have created such causes in the past. So while we look at other people dying suddenly in such natural disasters and violence and so on, this doesn't mean that we are going to escape unscathed from those things if we do not watch our actions to how we treat other living beings. So therefore, sentient beings have to understand, not only with pity to the people who die in violence and people who lose their loved ones in sudden death situation, but how we also can learn to take precautions with our own behavior. And a lot of the causes of the sudden death, medical causes of sudden death, are smoking and drinking and overweight and high blood pressure. These are all to do with one's diet. These are all to do with the ones not doing exercise. These are all person not being able to moderate their food. In the Buddhist teachings, they always recommend people to practice, like fasting, half a day. When we take precept, we take the 8 precepts and then fast in the evening and not eat any solid food. And they have these days, it's called intermittent fasting. Is quite a widely sort of recommended form of practice. This is only recent 20 years. But Buddha taught the moderation of eating right in his first early, and a lot of practitioners are actually heeding to the teachings, so as to avoid sudden loss of the precious human rebirth. The life is only precious if it lives, but if one is destroying it by one's unmoderated eating behavior or drinking behavior, then only one is creating the cause of acute cardiac arrest, or pulmonary complications. All of these are largely to do with what one eats and what one drinks. You can take so much medication, but what medication can only suppress some of the symptoms, but real causes of suffering is one's own actions. So therefore, when we look at the people who die in sudden death or violence, what happens is their consciousness do not cope very well with the sudden death. They're often born as ghosts. And these ghosts are very aggressive ghosts. They remain very angry and very difficult to to calm them, to pacify them, or liberate them, unless some highly realized spiritual people can do skillful prayers to release them from their bondage. Otherwise, those people who die in violence and sudden death are that which outnumbers why they have 36 kinds of hungry ghosts. Most of them are dying due to greed, hatred, miserliness, and then violence, and indulgence in those things we were talking about. And they crave the alcohol so much in this life, and the next life they're born as hungry ghosts. They can't find any drink, let alone alcohol. And they're born with a terrible body that is very big and that can hardly feel anything satisfactory to find, but yet they could not die because they're craving for the drink. They're craving for the particular food. And when we meditate, we try to restrain our cravings and therefore sit still for whatever, whether it's 2-hour sessions and 4 hours or 4 sessions of the 2-hour each day meditation. The more you restrain and do meditation, more you are trying to restrain your cravings and try to take simple food and simple kind of necessities and try to contain one's greed and cravings. It's because of the incessant craving, people become blinded by that. They don't know that enjoyment in the mouth is temporary, but suffering to the lung is quite a long-term suffering. It might even destroy the very lungs. It's a longevity. Short pleasure in the mouth, but just as drastic suffering to the heart and lung, liver. These people aren't able to consider. So the mindfulness in Buddhism is mindfulness of eating, mindfulness of drinking, and mindful of what to do, what not to do, and therefore knowing that even if one pleases the 5 sense doors, but if the 6 sense doors never get heeded to, then the 5 sense doors, like the mouth is one of the 5 sense doors. It's a big one, that one. That door is a very big one. Not only what goes in, but what it comes out of that is really dangerous. So that's why the mouth is such a door that we need to watch what we put in as well as what comes out of that. So sentient beings, some people are dying of sudden death because of their bad mouth karma, instantly, even in this very life, there are some people who have written or said things so bad to hurt millions of people, and they are themselves are completely like a prison for life. They have to hide wherever they go because they wrote something or they said something to hurt millions of people or people of different faith or whatever, and there's a bounty on the person's head, and as a result, the person has in this very lifetime he's exposed to immediate sudden death by people attacking the person, like you saw the violent attack on Salman Rushdie only a couple of months ago, It's because he's been hiding like that for years and years because he wrote this book. But he never thought there were consequences for him to write. He thought there was freedom of speech. But what he didn't realize how many or innocent believers in Islam religion was hurt by his kind of erudite ability to write something. So there are karmic consequences whatever person does, and he nearly died suddenly died because he was attacked. So people die suddenly, not because of someone attacked him, but because he himself have created causes to bring such attack on him or similar. So therefore, when we talk about understanding sentient beings, we're talking about understanding sentient beings, why they die in sudden violence or whatever sudden death people may have increased. Not only the person's death is very sudden, but what happens to the consciousness who usually do not cope very well. Some people die suddenly under violence, like Moggallaniputra or whatever, and that's it. And Moggallaniputra doesn't have any more karma left. That was the exhaustion of karma. That was last karma that he had to die under that violence. So it doesn't mean sudden death is necessarily bad news to the consciousness of the deceased. It might be the kind of last bit of hardship they have to encounter, and after that, it's all debts paid. So sometimes sudden death may not mean necessarily very, very adverse to the consciousness of disease. Who knows? But at least the misery of the person is ended by that sudden death. And why do people commit suicide and murder suicide? Because they're living together, or with or without each other, is such a misery. And you can't have your way, they can't have your way because you don't want them, and you might as well cause both death. And so such sudden death caused by murder suicide actually puts an end to the suffering of that particular life, because they do not have to have any hating relationship anymore. So that's why if you don't let me have this, you too can't have these children, type of thing. So the murder suicide is basically try to put his suffering and enjoyment of other to put an end, so that neither of them have any benefit of or suffering together. And so that's why what I'm saying is, when sentient beings who experience sudden death, sometimes it's not only it is hard to go through that, but at the same time, it definitely puts an end to the misery. It doesn't mean that people should be resorting to that as a result of knowing this. But some people who do experience sudden death, that it may have been hard for the survivors to accept, but maybe that is the only way to bring a peace to that that soul, because of the karmic complications it might have. Another point is that if we understand people who die suddenly in violence and so on, we need to do special prayers in order to appease the spirits of the deceased as best as we can. Particularly, we are the survivor relatives and friends, so that the spirit of this deceased do not become so much a ferocious ghost that will harm you and others that are very connected with. The spirit himself or herself do not know they're harming us, but they are attached to us. Their attachment and clinging to us want us to go with them. And therefore, they may even cause death to us, and we might even die as a result of their sudden death, because of the incomplete karma that we owe to them, and we do have mutual attachment. As therefore, the mutual attachment, or angst, or aversion, or resentment and guilt towards each other can be ripened as a result of someone dying in tragic violence and death. Then this spirit can also take us with them, because we too have created such conditions to experience our own sudden death or short-lived life, because we didn't do certain things by the books to benefit and help and appease the deceased persons, either in life or thereafter after death. So that's why Buddhists take a great liberty to do prayers for the deceased, particularly for your loved ones, in their memory, in order to fulfill their social expectation or spiritual customs and so on. If we follow that, this can greatly assist and appease and maybe pacify some of the severe suffering of the deceased. But otherwise, those who die in sudden, those who die in violence, those who die in tragedy, those who die in natural disasters, and not being able to say goodbye, not being able to really plan to die, they usually have planned to live. And all of a sudden their plan got aborted, and they are not happy with it. And because they don't understand the karma of their own choosing, that they have to die in such tragic violence. So that's why when you see the mass graveyard, when all these people die in a stampede, will people get to recognize, identify who is who? Or some of them never get recognized. They don't know who they are, and they have to bury them in mass graves. When there are mass grave burials, that's where all the collective karma of those who did the killing themselves together has ripened them to not only die together in the same condition, and also they become buried together without any formal prayers or funerals or the post-death prayers and rituals, what each society feel and deemed to do for the benefit of the living and the deceased. Even when people do die naturally, it is very important to do all the post-death prayers, rituals as one's religion and culture dictates, in order to appease the spirit of the deceased, in order to please also the surviving friends and relatives, so that the cause of death of a loved one does not cause discord among the surviving, which many times happen, by the way. Unfortunately, as a result of the death of the mother, all the siblings and other families are fighting over material and so on. There's a lot of post-death conflicts and argument ends many siblings and relatives in court. This is sad, People are fighting over the estates of the deceased. When that person was alive, they did not do all the things like a children should do to repay the kindness, care for the elderly, look after them, be kind to them. They are not willing to do that. When it comes to claiming the estate of the deceased, they are all quite happily going in the court hiring lawyers. These are exactly the kind of these are exactly the things that the sentient beings should not do, particularly those who have died in violence and tragedy and difficult circumstance. Instead, one should boost the prayers and the rituals and the good deeds in the name of the deceased, that sentient being who have just suffered what we call sudden death. Sentient beings who have experienced sudden death have suddenly lost everything. And the surviving relatives think what they have lost is theirs and make a claim on it, use it for themselves without doing anything in memory of the deceased's will and whatever, of course has a huge karmic repercussion. So sentient beings don't understand each other, particularly those who died suddenly. And those who died suddenly, but all the things they have left behind, all the things they did are not inconsequential. They have consequences to everyone who put their hands on those things. So therefore, if one goes to claim an estate of the deceased of someone who died suddenly, there are karmic consequences, whether one is worthy of claiming any of the thing or whether one should even be in a position to claim anything is highly questionable. The more you think you're entitled to inherit from a deceased person who died in tragic violence, is the less probably you deserve, depending what we do. So we don't understand the deceased person's estate and whatever they have left behind is their sweat and tear and negative karma they have created. Now, if one were to go and possess and use them, it's like eating molten bronze. It will burn all your guts. So therefore, we need to understand the sentient beings who have died and their estates. That's why there is a tradition of people always dedicating the estates of the deceased for the betterment of the society, to give to charity, to give to people who need, to do for something good for the public, and donate to some good causes and things like that. if we did that, then we understand sentient beings who have died and whose material possessions or whatever are not kept for our own enjoyment and consumption, even though we might have the legal right to it, but do you have the karmic right? That's the problem. Most people don't. We don't have the karmic fitness to digest them, even though you have legal right to them, but yet it will be a burdensome karma for you to own and use for your own benefit, because you don't understand that what you are owning or inheriting is legally right for you to, because it might be your parents, might be your brothers or whatever. But nevertheless, you have no idea how much the deceased didn't dare to use, spare, or give, or do anything with those things, and you think now you can use all of that. But you may have if you understand sentient beings and their suffering in the hungry ghost realm, in the hell realm, it will be far more better to do the prayer on their behalf, because it is largely is their sweat and tear. So if we don't understand sentient beings, yet we are because we don't understand sentient beings, we don't realize the consequences of what they have left also carries the weight of the karma of the sentient being that you think you have lost. Or you think your gain of inheriting so much is a great benefit, but because you don't understand sentient beings who have died and where they are going through, what they are going through as a result of their karmic consequences, that's why we have to be careful in treating on behalf of the people who died, particularly those who died suddenly and in sudden death, in violence and so on. It's even more important that we take great precaution how best to execute for the highest and most wholesome benefit that may be dedicated for the deceased person's consciousness to find a happier rebirth or purify at least the negative karma they have created. Because most people, they have hoarded and hoarded and hoarded. When they die, they haven't actually done anything useful with the things they have. They have become a burden, become a cause of worry. But if we are responsible executor of the will or whatever, then we will use it all for the above mentioned worthy causes, to the delight of the deceased and their spirit, to the delight of the relatives and other friends. They will also rejoice that you have such a carefully executed in the name of the deceased. Then we understand the deceased sentient being. We also understand the survival of the deceased sentient beings, and therefore we have made sure that things of the deceased estate doesn't become a cause of one's own attachment and possessiveness. If you understand sentient beings, they are so mean over things. They fight over things. So the person has saved and saved all these things in whole life, and all of a sudden we think we have the right to do what we should. But if we do not do it properly, it is the very things over which the siblings are ending up in court. And would that delight the consciousness, spirit of the mother or the father who died? No, they will be devastated to see what's going on. So, therefore, when sentient beings don't understand the state of the deceased, they also will not understand what they're doing themselves to face even more severe karmic causes later into the years, if they're not careful with how they execute the will of the deceased properly and honorably for the benefit of the deceased. Because we think the deceased is invisible, he's got no voice, and you can do whatever you like because your name is there to be the executed will, but yet you use all of these things. We don't understand sentient being. The invisible spirit of sentient beings is more present than he is invisible. The soul, the spirit of the deceased is right over your shoulder, and he will not be happy if you don't honor the deceased carefully. And that's why in Buddhism, how we treat the post-death of the deceased's possessions in the name of the deceased within the first year. They not only sort of toss and turn a couple of years and never dare to use or give for this and keeping for. Only after 10 years one starting to give. No, it should be executed within the first 12 months in order to lighten up the burden of the karma of the deceased. So then we understand the sentient beings who have just recently died, because they didn't even dare to use those things for themselves. How would they easily be able to part with those things which they have died? They don't. So what is our role? To understand the consciousness of the deceased sentient beings and their attachment, their miserliness with which they have made to keep all of these things, over which they fought with the brothers, over which they fought with the friends, and yet they have not even made any good use to do a decent charity to anything. They have just hoarded and hoarded and hoarded. A lot of people die rich, only to earn a place in Hungry Ghost. Hungry people who go in Hungry Ghost realms are not people who are poor in this life, you know. All the Hungry Ghosts are ex-rich people. Ex-rich people, rich in miserliness, by the way. Rich, not necessarily rich in miserliness. They all go to Hungry Ghost realm. They all have joined a life membership there. So we can lighten the burden of the lifespan of the Hungry Ghost by executing these things, by not keeping for ourselves, or going ourselves for a holiday, or buying an house because we got money from the deceased estate. That's really dangerous. We call them, do not eat molten bronze. If you drink molten bronze, it will burn all your, even your tongue, let alone your throat and everything else. So that's why you wouldn't believe how many in even the poor families, they will even take loans to do the right thing in the name of the deceased, so that they don't make it difficult for the deceased. So that's why we have to understand the deceased sentient beings. If we understand the deceased sentient beings, we understand their suffering. What must be like to be in a pardo? What must be like to be dying in tragedy and violence, suddenly in the fire, suddenly in the violence or whatever? And how would they cope? What kind of guidance and help and expectation they will have of us as their loved one? So with that in mind, we, instead of thinking the deceased are invisible, they are still your loved one. They still deserve us to respectfully do everything as much as they would have loved us to do. We better that in order that we actually stand in front and to represent them, and so that then we try to appease, purify all the heavy karma by doing these things on their behalf. If we did that, then we understand sentient beings. Then we understand sentient beings, their karma, their sorrow, their miserliness, their greed, how long the hours they worked, how much didn't they dare to live and give for themselves, let alone others, and how much they have saved as if they're going to have many years after which they will enjoy. But in the meantime, they never actually did give even themselves a decent holiday. So you can see people are so hard on themselves. They want happiness, but they do not know how to give themselves happiness. They become enslaved simply on the pursuit of materialism and at the sacrifice of their spiritual well-being. But if we are a good spiritual friend to the deceased, which means we are, because if you are the executor of the will, then this means we have to stand in their stead better than they did for themselves, because we do care for their spirit, where they go and where they don't go, and therefore we don't want to waste even a penny of the deceased estate. Why? Because we understand the mind of the deceased, what they may be hoping, what they really want us to do. So we are actually doing even better than they themselves could do, because we understand the suffering of those who died in tragedy, those who died in misery, those who lived very miserly, those who lived very stingy, but yet they have kept this much for all the time that they don't have time for. So all the time they lived miserably, and the things they have kept for a time, they don't have to use it. So these are the sentient beings. This is how stupid sentient beings are. Just like the mice. Just steal things, steal grain from their, things there. They hide in their little nest. They have stored much bigger than their own body. So sentient beings are so good at making themselves suffer. And we need to understand sentient beings who die. Now, not necessarily those who die in tragedy, violence, but someone in your life when they dies, what you will to do in the memory of them. A lot of people have no intention to do anything for the deceased. They might do a little wake, they call wake in the West, maybe $700 just for the wake, and that's it. And they have every intention to use everything, all their estate for themselves, to do this and that. Wait a minute, you don't understand the kind of molten bronze you're swallowing. Because we don't understand the karma and heavy weight of consuming things from people who we think are his father, from who we think is wife, from who we think is brother. If we did that, while we have total no argument from the legally, but karmically speaking, we don't understand what does it mean to the deceased to have this all left in our hand. We can do whatever I like. The deceased are looking over their shoulders. They are actually watching. What are you doing with my things? Because they didn't dare to use and live properly even when they're alive, and then now the spirit is so attached to them, and that's why they are born as a ghost in the wall, in the broom cupboard, and whatever. The ghost just doesn't quite get into this your safe or your bank, but they will stay in the very house they are attached to. They are going to haunt the very people they are attached to, and they don't know they are haunting them. Why? Because we don't understand the spirit, soul of the deceased, and how attached they are to their things, not only in life but even after death. Why? Because they don't know they're dead. They still think they are the owners. Still they think it's their house. Still they think they're... So these are, of course, full of in the Buddhist sutras, and these are not taught in any of the courses they teach in universities. These are all spiritual realm, and there's ample kind of proof that all spiritual traditions, they try to honor the deceased by people wearing nice clothes on the funeral day, and they all look very smart and all of that. Why we do that? It suggests there is a social expectation. The deceased actually knows that we are thinking of them, and when we are saying eulogy at the funeral, we are trying to please the spirit of the deceased. But they are not going to be pleased only on the funeral day, people are wearing smart clothes and saying nice words, but they really wanted to see what we will do thereafter. That's not just socially impress the crowd of 200 people. That's not enough. How much do we actually did we love our mother? What did you do to fulfill her legacy, her wishes? Try to fulfill a few of those wishes as her will would have indicated, and being able to do that will greatly uplift her spirit, and she be liberated from clinging onto her things or even to us as theirs, because we are doing very things they failed to do, and did it very honorably to the delight of their own consciousness. So that's why the understanding sentient beings, particularly those who died in tragedy, and their spirit, what might be their thinking thereafter, is a very important one in Buddhist teachings. And that's why the post-death prayers, rituals, things we do on their memory is very pertinent role and responsibility and duty of those who have lost loved ones. So with this, I'm going to conclude. If you have one or two questions, please feel free to type them or put your hands up. Those in the Zoom audience. Okay, there being no questions, we will now conclude here. Thank you everybody for joining. Let's do the dedication merit so that by being present here at this session today and lending our attention to this topic of understanding sentient beings in general and those who die in tragic violence, how can we best learn to fulfill their wishes honorably and not otherwise. So we do the dedication merits. Ocean, Herenda, Mayana, Dijin, whatever merit I have ever, Mehobe, becomes and love as a true holder, Mayana, Dijin, courage, Manjushrin, Yode, as a man, Drabadradilai, following all the Hezamba, Ashadege, all the Mede Hexalem, Body Cheodak, Teba, Weta, no Hedanzo, where has been born angry, freely without generation. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Take care.